going to move over into simply moving files. So in this case, we'll just jump right in, and it'll be the same structure as the copy command. You give it the command we're going to use is mv, so that's to move a file, and we're going to give a file name. So we're going to, in this case, you know what? Let's list the directories and everything here. So we're going to move one of our backup files here. So I'm going to do move sshd, hit tab. I want to specify a backup file, and I want to use my dated backup file just because that's what I prefer. And I'm going to move it into my temp directory. So I'm going to do my temp, hit tab, and then I'm going to use the / to specify I want it to go into that directory. So this is a simple way to do it. I've got everything correct, move, the file that I want, and then the directory. And I'm going to hit enter. And now when I do a listing, I no longer have the dated backup directory, but if I do a listing of my temp directory and hit enter, I now see sshd underscore config dash copy.bak underscore the date. So perfect. I moved that file from one location to another on the system. And what this does is, it's important to know you're not actually moving the data on the disk itself or on the drive itself. The way file systems work is there's a pointer that references the actual data, and when you move it, you're actually just moving or updating the pointer to the data. So imagine the data sitting in section A on a drive, and you move it to another location. It's still in section A, like there's no reason for it to move, but there's a table that references that section A is where that file's contents are held, and that gets updated to the new path, so that way it can find the file. So as long as it's on the same partition, on the same drive, that's all it's doing. And what we'll go over later is I'll show you when we move it to another partition what happens, but it's good to know that you're not actually moving the data, it's just changing the pointer to the file. One last thing before we're done with these topics is I went ahead and just generated a large file, a 1 GB file. We'll go over this command and its use in another video, but in this case, just you can see that the output says I have basically a 1 GB file, and I called it very large file. So I'm going to do a listing here. And what I wanted to show you is I'm going to move this to another directory, and I want you to see the time frame. So this is referring back to the data not actually moving if it's on the same volume. So I'm going to just move this file, move very large file, and I'm going to move it to my directory. And notice the prompt comes back instantly. It's very quick, and it took a few seconds at least for that 1 GB file to be created. And if it's moving the actual data, I would expect to wait a few seconds for that to occur. But in this case, the prompt comes back immediately. If I list my directory and then very large file, I can see that it's there, and actually we'll do, we'll use ls-lh just to see the size. So we have a 1 GB file of just basically nothing, but it's taking up 1 GB on the system. And it took no time at all, though, to move it from one directory to another directory on the same volume or the same partition on my system. So I'm going to now move this to another partition, and we'll go over this command later, but this is df, well, we'll show you the disk file systems that are available, and currently I'm working under this / directory, and notice I've got, I'm using 1.6 gigabytes. One of those is that file I created, but I want to move it to somewhere completely different, and I'm going to use this mount D partition over here. So notice I'm going to now I'm going to move, I have to specify my directory and then very large file. And so now I'm going to move this file to /mnt. I have to fully qualify it, meaning I start with the /. So I'm going to do D and then /, and then that's all I have to do. It's going to go into my directory and take very large file, and it's going to move it to /mnt/d and put the file there. So when I hit enter, watch. So notice the prompt is hanging. It hung for a couple seconds, and that's because it actually had to take the data write it to the new volume, and then it removes the volume from my current partition. So if I do a listing of my directory, um, there's no very large file. But if I do a listing of Mount D, I now see a very large file there. Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And so it's good to know about how this works, because sometimes when you're moving files, depending on what volume or sorry, what drive you're using, it can take longer for things to back up than based on where you're moving the file. I've moved hundreds of gigabytes before, and that can take a long time depending on which file or partition you're moving from. And so if it's on the same volume or on the same partition, it will just change the pointer and it's updated. If you're moving it to another partition, just be aware that it might take a little bit of time